Hello friends. Okay, so I am here today to discuss with you all about standard 10th social science, and in that history subject we have chapter 5 print culture and the modern world. So in today's session we are going to discuss about this chapter without using any computer screen PowerPoint presentation, or we are not going to use any photocopies. Let's have an actual classroom teaching learning experience. So let's start today's chapter. Okay, so friends, your chapter starts with the introduction. The first page in your book, that is given introduction. So the introduction is just like this, that in our day-to-day life we come across through the various kind of printed materials, right? So you must be knowing this is so simple, even though sometimes the children may have the confusion in that introduction too. So let's remove that confusion and let's continue. So in day-to-day life we go through the different printed materials such as books, journals, newspapers, famous paintings, circulars, calendars, diaries, advertisements, cinema posters, printed literatures, printed images, right? So many things we go through each and every day, and we come across through the printed material. How the question comes in exam, maybe from, however, no question can be asked from this, but if it may ask, so what kind of question can be framed and what can be asked, right, from the introduction. So here the question can be asked in this way, that what kind of printed material we come across through in our day-to-day life. So these are the things what we have to write. Okay, so such things we come across through in our day-to-day life, but we never imagine that how this printed material and the printing presses that has reached to us, and how it has shaped today's world, today's modern world, that has been shaped due to this print culture. So there is a long history of the printed material and print culture. So that is what we are going to discuss here in this chapter. Okay, now the next point we have, we are going to discuss in this chapter about the journey of printed material from East Asian countries to Europe, and finally how it has reached to India. So the spread of printed material and print technology, how it has traveled from East Asian countries and it has reached to European countries, and finally we shall discuss in this chapter that how it has come to India and who has brought. Okay, now the first topic you have in your textbook, the first printed books. So earliest kind of printed books or the print technology that was developed in China, Japan and Korea. How the question comes in exam? So question comes in this way, that where was the earliest kind of print technology developed? I repeat the question, where was the earliest kind of print technology developed? So the answer is, the earliest kind of print technology was developed in China, Japan and Korea. Is that clear? So this is what the frequently asked question, however it's so easy one. Okay, moving further. So what kind of print technology developed in China? Mainly print technology that developed in China, so that was hand printing. So how the hand printing was done? So hand printing was done through the wood blocks, right? Wood blocks were used, and that was a time of AD 594. This was the year. During this time, books in China, they were printed through the hand by using the wood blocks. So in that, today's rubber stamp, we know that how the letters are embossed, then ink is applied to it and we get the impression. Likewise, there too, they were using the wood blocks, and these wood blocks were carved out with the alphabet letters, and this is how they were getting the print or image of that letters, and the printing was done. right? But this printing of wood block, that was done on very thin papers, very thin papers. And as the papers were so thin and porous, that is why they were just printed on single side, and finally they were stitched into the book form, which was known as accordion book. Now here comes our next question. Here one more question we can add in that. During which year the wood blocks hand printing developed in China? So that was the year 594, hand printing through the wood blocks. The second question, what do you mean by accordion book? So actually accordion, it's a kind of musical instrument, you must have seen, that is pressed from both the sides, and when air is filled, so it produces the sound. So when you club it, so it seems as if it's a very thick book. So that is the accordion instrument. So what to write in this answer? So accordion book were the books which were printed on thin porous paper. Ink, it was the surface of the paper were inked, and ink was applied on it, and then it was stitched. So that book form is known as the accordion book. Now after that, what they were doing? So these accordion books were copied very accurately and perfectly. So the duplication with accuracy, that is known as calligraphy. Your question here comes in exam. What do you mean by calligraphy? So calligraphy, what to write the answer? So calligraphy means duplication with the accuracy. So that art of duplication or copying through the or with the accuracy, that is called the calligraphy. Is that clear? Okay, now so in our textbook, the in first point, second paragraph, we have many a time the students may have the confusion too, that what to read and how to read and what is the answer and what is the question. So let it be very much clear. So the question comes in exam from that point. Frequently asked question in previous board exams. Question comes in this way: why was the imperial state in China major producer of printed materials for long time? Or the question can be turned and twisted. You can be asked in this way too: what were the factors responsible that increased the volume of print in China? So in short, what are the factors? So let's discuss this. So particularly here we are discussing about the 16th century, right? So during the 16th century, what were the factors responsible to increase the volume of print in China? So the first point we have here, so China was holding a very huge, a very large bureaucratic system. What is bureaucratic system? So bureaucratic system here, it refers to the government that runs through the officials, and the governmental administrations are done by the officials, right? So in short, that wherever this system is that, so they need to appoint several civil servants. So the civil servants could administrate properly their country. So in China too, as they were having a very large bureaucratic system, so they wanted to appoint these civil servants, and for this they need to take civil examinations. So without examinations, the civil servants could not be appointed. So civil examinations could be conducted, and for these two they needed to produce textbooks, and these textbooks were produced, and as the time went up, so number of candidates also increased, and the maximum number of candidates they appeared for the civil service examination. So that increased the volume of print in China in 16th century. Is that clear? Okay. so this is what about the 16th century. Now, second question comes here, that what are the factors responsible that increase the volume of print in China in 17th century? And many a time answer in detail, 5 marks or 4 marks questions, right? So you need to add something from 16th century and 17th century also. But if it is specified very properly about 17th century, no need to write this. Okay, coming to the point. So in 17th century, what are the factors responsible that increase the volume of print in China? So the first point, we have urban culture, urbanization, industrialization, and that has resulted into the urban culture bloomed in China, and that needed the printed materials, and they came in day-to-day life, the printed things, right? So this has increased the volume of print in China in 17th century. Second point, we have print diversified. What do you mean by here diversified? So diversified, it refers to that the print earlier was used only by the scholars and several institutions and several intellectuals, but print diversified by 17th century. Now it was no longer used by scholars. Common people, they also came in touch with the printed material, and they started using the printed material. So that has increased the volume of print in China. Okay, now so the common people, so we include here merchants, they also started using the printed materials and printing culture in their day-to-day life, in their businesses, right? So it became very common. Now moving further, it became so common that reading became leisure activity, free time activity, pastime activity. And when reading became leisure activity, so the demand of the books that grew more and more, and when the demand increased, so obviously the production increases, right? So this is also one of the reason that has increased the volume of print in China in 17th century. Now next point we have in our book, that is about new readership. So different readers, they were having their different choices of reading. So different choices, they were having the choice of reading prose, fictional, autobiography, anthology, poems and prose and plays and dramas and romantic novels and many things, right? So different kind of literatures came into existence, people started writing, and there were a group of people, those who started reading. So this has demanded the books, and that has increased the volume of print volume of print in China in 17th century. We are talking, right? Okay, next point, here we have rich women, they started reading. So rich women belong to the noble families. Earlier they were not reading, but when they started reading, so it became a matter of refinement and status. So that has inspired the common man and the common people, right? So moreover, women published their poetry and plays. So there were several women writers, those who wrote their poetries and plays, and they inspired others also. In context to India, in context to European countries, we shall go through the names of several female writers' name and their works too. Okay, so here women published their poetry and plays. Now, so this is what all about 17th century. Moving further, here we are discussing about 19th century. This is given in our textbook. That what are the reasons? Last paragraph of first topic, the first printed books in your textbook, right? So don't go through the whole big paragraph and tough language. Just you will be more, this will be more helpful for you. Okay, coming to the point. So in 19th century, and here we discuss about 16th century. So as and when the time passed, so there were so many changes into the print technology. So new technology developed in China as well as in the whole world. Printing technology developed. Western printing, right? So Western printing technology, new developed technology, Western, from the Western countries, that brought into China and different East Asian countries. And particularly as the Western type of schools were started in China and in East Asian countries, so that demanded more books, and for that they started printing the books. That has increased the volume of print in China. Next point, we have mechanical presses, right? So there was a gradual shifting from the hand printing to the mechanical printing as the demand increased for the books. So there was a greater need for the more production of books and cheaper production of books. So that has increased the demand of the books. So mechanical presses developed. As a result, Shanghai became the hub of the printed material. So many printing presses developed in Shanghai, right? So Shanghai became the hub of the printed material, center for the printed materials and its production and printing presses. One more question here we can say that name the town which became the hub of printed material. So Shanghai. Now, so that was a gradual shifting from hand printing to the mechanical printing. Is that clear? So this is what we are given about China and the development of printing in China. So from China, it reaches to the European countries and India. So let's see, still it goes from China to Japan. So who brought printing technology to Japan? So mainly the Buddhist missionaries. With a view to spreading Buddhism, they moved from one place, one country to another place, right? And these Buddhist missionaries during the years 768 to 770, during this time, during the 8th century, they reached there and they introduced the woodblock printing. Right, woodblock printing, not new technology. Okay, the first beginning. Okay, so after this woodblock printing introduced, so they printed their first book, the oldest Japanese book, that is named as Diamond Sutra, that was published in the year 868. One mark question. First question: who brought hand print technology to Japan? Buddhist missionaries. When? This is the year. Name the oldest Japanese book. So that is Diamond Sutra. When it was published? In the year 868. So that was the beginning of the printing culture in Japan. But later, slowly and gradually, that too became common in Japan. So after this, they started printing on textile, they started printing on playing cards, they started using the paper money, poems were written, prose were written, and that increased the volume of print in China too. Okay, now cheap books were available as cheap and affordable books were available, so that has demanded more and more books in China, and that has resulted into the increase of volume of print in China. Now, late 18th century, here latest one, this is the old thing. Late 18th century, what were the main factors that increased the volume of print in Japan, right? So, publishing practices became common. So there were several publishers, publishing houses were there, writers were there, right? So publishing practices became common that flooded the market with the printed materials and different kind of literature. Urban circles, urban circles were flooded with the cheap books which could be affordable by the common man, and very simple poor people could also purchase that. So the urban circles were flooded, and particularly in Edo. So Edo, it's a old name of Tokyo. So you can be asked one mark question that what is the former name of Tokyo? So Tokyo, it was known as Edo. Now coming to this point, third point, we have collection of painting. So it became a hobby, collection of paintings, right? New technology developed, tea house gathering, everywhere the people, they started using this kind of printed material, calendars, circulars, newspapers, and many things, right? Now then, libraries, several patrons were there, so establishing libraries and to provide financial assistance for the setup of libraries, that became very common. That was the mark of status, and that were the lending libraries, right? And that has increased the volume of print. On different subjects, the printing materials were available on different subjects were chosen. So on which subjects? Books on women, behavior, their etiquettes and their lifestyle, about musical instruments, about calculations, about tea ceremony, flower arrangements, and many more. So many subjects were there, right? So as the new subjects added and new write-ups came up, so new writers came up, new readers came up, and that has increased the volume of print in China. Okay, now so next point we have, last point we have in first topic, in our first topic of this chapter, last point, we have one box 1. So in box 1 we are given information about Kitagawa Utamaro. To the point. First question here comes that who was Kitagawa Utamaro? So Kitagawa Utamaro was an artist, and he was famous for his particular kind of art, right? So which art? So he was known for his ukiyo art. Which art? Ukiyo art. Now second question comes here, that who were influenced, who were inspired by Kitagawa Utamaro, right? So his paintings and the images of his painting that traveled from China to different places, and this has from Japan, China to different countries, particularly in US and UK. So who were inspired? So he inspired Manet, Monet, and Van Gogh, right? So these were the artists, those who were inspired by Kitagawa Utamaro. This is what box 1 here you can be asked in this way. Okay, so here first point of print culture and modern world gets over. Very soon I'm going to deliver you the session. You are just going to see part 2 of this chapter, and we'll just going to make it more easier. If you really like it, whatever feedback you have, suggestions are welcome, feedback is also welcome. And if you are interested in any other chapter, so you can recommend that, so we can work upon that. Okay, so thank you all and good day.